Welcome to another episode of What No One Tells You. I'm Chris.
I'm Sarah.
And today we're in our house. We've been recording the podcast from the road in our truck camper, but now we're not in the studio. We decided to bring the studio home with us.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever podcast from the house.
I don't think we have either.
Welcome to our home.
Yeah, it's quaint.
It's our fireplace behind us, and I'm sure this is going to be like the worst setup we've done, though, just because the lighting's changing. It's like partly cloudy outside, so just bear with us if you're watching the video.
That's okay. You're driving down the road right now. You're listening to us. You're ready for me to make a joke and laugh.
Right.
Okay. So today's episode is all about business. Well, I mean, it's primarily working from the road. We have a lot of questions geared towards us about being digital nomads.
But it's not just business. It's also self-development. I feel like the stuff that we talk about in this episode is very, maybe you're in a rut in life. Maybe while the conversation is largely about like figuring out your career, a lot of it could be applied to you just feel bored in life. Like you need to find that thing that gets you excited. And like, what is it that gets you excited? What is that hobby you need to chase after? Maybe that hobby that you're doing now is your future career. So that's kind of what this conversation is about. We get asked all the time how to start a business on the road, or we've had people ask us to do a whole episode on starting Friendful Coffee and what that looks like. And while we have started many a business, some have succeeded and some have failed. I feel like where our forte is more on the marketing side and the dreaming side. And while we can execute, there are people out there like our guest today who are better at coaching you and guiding you through the practicalities of it and helping you figure out what that place is for you in the world and making sure you do A, B, C, and D to stay on track.
Yeah. So David Weaver, he's actually a brother of a really good friend of ours. And so, but he runs a successful business and he coaches other entrepreneurs or people wanting to start their business and teaches them how to be a good business person.
Yeah, it's sort of a loaded conversation, but it is full of good nuggets. And be sure to check out all of his information. We'll link everything down below because there are some resources that we talk about throughout the episode. But let's just jump right into it.
Well, hang on. Before we jump in, we have to, this is the part where we ask for your help, the audience, the people listening to this.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button on YouTube and make sure if you could leave us a 5-star. Well, no, hang on. I'm not requesting a 5-star review. I'm asking a truthful review.
An honest review.
An honest review. If you can be honest on iTunes or if you want to leave a star rating on Spotify, that would be great.
But if you don't like us, just maybe keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Move on. All right. Now let's jump into the podcast. So today we are joined by our good friend, David Weaver. And we've actually, I say a good friend because we feel like we know him because we're really good friends with some family of his. But I feel like we're already there. So David, thanks for being part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
So I guess briefly, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Like we sort of know who you are. We do know who you are, but just tell us, so people who may not know you, where you're from, what you do, and all that good stuff, just to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. I have been married for 16 years. I think 16 or 17. I have 2 little girls who are 7 and 10, and I've grown up and lived in the Pacific Northwest my entire life. And the more I travel to other places, I love traveling, but the more it makes me love the Pacific Northwest. I just love living up here in Western Washington. It's so great. And professionally, what I do is I work primarily with business owners, and I do there's a number of different titles that you could put on it, but I've kind of landed on this title for now of self-mastery coaching, and really helping people, live up to their full potential, and then also like how that then translates into their business and everything like intertwined with that.
There's a lot of different topics that I want to talk about today because I love talking about business. I love doing all of this, but you did say something at the very beginning, is that you live in the Pacific Northwest, and that is a place that we love so much. So why do you like it? Like why the PNW?
Yeah, I think it's the access to all of the stuff that I really enjoy doing, and primarily it's the mountains. And so I grew up just doing a lot of hiking and spending time outside when I was younger, and then I'd say like kind of right out of high school, just started like, all right, let's see what kind of peaks we can start ticking off. And then my best friend and I started I remember we just actually looked at it like a week ago. He bought me this like 75 best scrambles in Washington State or whatever. And he wrote in the front cover of it, and we started working on, checking off peaks in there. And then from there, it really expanded into a lot of things, which I can get into if you want or not. But I just think it's like you have Mount Rainier National Park is one of the most amazing places on the planet. And I've just recently even more fallen in love with that place. But North Cascades, you got Mount Rainier National Park, you got the Olympics, you got the ocean, you got the Puget Sound, you got all the San Juan Island. It's just like, I don't know. It's pretty hard to beat. I mean, and then last weekend we went to the east side, which is much more deserty. And I was like, man, I forget that this is right here too. Like, we don't have to drive all the way to Utah to get some desert. We could just like go an hour and a half over here and get that thing too. So I just feel like it has so much to offer.
It does. Don't make us jealous. We miss it. We do love it. We love the East Coast in its own way, but man, the Pacific Northwest, I mean, that's how we know your family is just from living in Seattle. So we miss those mountains.
Well, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. I mean, everybody talks about Seattle. They talk about Portland. They talk about the evergreens and the mountains. But nobody ever talks about that the rest of the state is like a desert. And it's so surprising as somebody that didn't grow up there. If you're driving across the country, you're coming from the East Coast and then you finally hit like Spokane, Washington. And then after that, it's just like, where are we? Like, there's
until you
nothing.
Hit the mountains. Yeah,
it's
pretty
crazy.
barren.
Yeah.
We love it out there. I want to preface the conversation because I don't know how much you know about us, but let's preface it and say that we get asked a lot about starting businesses. So a huge part of what we do is we're digital nomads, which is just, a lifestyle where people work remotely and that kind of thing. But we do get asked a lot about, could you talk about starting a business and what that looks like and trying to manage it from the road? I mean, there's, the legal side of it. And then there's just the entire, keeping yourself afloat while you're trying to do that, just the everyday to day kind of thing. So I think that's what we'd really love to focus with you here today. You do business coaching. So we always tell people as digital nomads, you have two options. You can work for somebody or you can work for yourself. And I think you could really speak to the working for yourself side of it. If somebody wants to get into this, or maybe they already have their own business, what are some practical tips? Maybe just give some inspiration or insight. I'll just let you kind of run with it. But what would you like people to know if they want to be their own business?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, we could take this in a million directions, but I think if we just like zoom out really far for a second, I think it's really important, and partly how I ended up where I am today is to think about like what you really want to do. And because it's easy, you could do anything. There's so many things you could do, but like what feels important. And I love this question that I've asked for a long time, like what makes you feel fully alive, and like exploring that and trying, different avenues of that and what that could be for you. Because I don't know about you guys, but for me, part of my inspiration was to become an entrepreneur and I didn't realize it at the time, but watching my dad work in like corporate America sort of job and like not really liking it, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I started in like IT, and I just got a job because I was like young and I knew the guy that worked there, and it was a great job. And it was like, I could have taken that I can still be working in IT today. Obviously, like it's a very, good, lucrative field, but I was so bored. So like, I think it really has to start with kind of having that like interest and passion in something, regardless of if it's going to be, being an entrepreneur or not. I think that, we live in a time where the opportunities to go after that type of thing is more available than ever. So, but then from there, it's like, well, what can I do? Here's what I like and what can I do? And sometimes we conflate those two things too. Like, you can't see, but right over here, I have like a drum set and a piano sitting over here. And my original dream when I was younger was to like be a musician and make money doing that, which obviously didn't work out, but
there's still time.
Yeah, there's still time, right? But it's cool now because I don't have any pressure or anything around that. I can just play music. I can write music when I want. I can let inspiration come and go, and there's no pressure around that. And so sometimes it is valuable to like say, okay, I'm gonna maybe get into entrepreneurship, but it's maybe something that I like, but it's not like all of my passions or just like this one all consuming thing. You know, I think it's okay to have like kind of separation there sometimes, because it can be really rewarding that way to have like outside passions that you're not just doing work. Because I feel like if your passion is your work and that's the only thing, it's easy to get burned out on this thing that you love potentially. I don't know if I really answered your question. But
No, it was a loaded question.
Yeah.
In your defense, it was a very loaded question. But you're definitely hitting on like that ping point for us. Like this is a constant battle for us of like you love what you do, and so it can be consuming. And then if you start to feel tired by it, you get that sense of burnout, and then you feel like you have no passion or hobby to go and do as a rest. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, no,
You're
absolutely.
you're shaking your head.
Because I'm like, oh no, my job's my hobby is my job now, or you're something I really love, and it's my job, and it's tied to money and self-worth and all of the, like, I feel like it's being an entrepreneur, starting your own business is very romantic, you know, like I feel like and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can speak to this, that, you know, like you set out to start your own business, you're like, you want to set your own hours, do all that. But then after you're on the grind and you're working and working and working, it's not as freeing as you think, right? You know, so like, yeah, it's a lot more work than maybe working for corporate America. So can you speak to that? Like how much work, what all does this entail for you to like start your own business, to do it? Like what's the reality of it?
And how can I add something to that?
Yeah.
How can you save yourself from ending up where we found ourselves at times where we let our entire passion become our job, and then you get that sense of you're trapped with no escape, if that makes sense.
yeah.
We love what we do. I
Yeah.
want to say that,
Well,
but it can definitely be very high pressure. It's like high risk, high reward,
Yeah.
high pressure, high reward.
I feel like we just like did a grenade and we just threw it
Sorry.
at David. We're like, aha, gotcha. Like, let's go. So
I like it.
feel free to like break it down as much as you want and answer whatever you feel comfortable with. But
Yeah.
we can, just go with it.
Well, so I think there's like a number of different elements here, and like, so there's sort of a normal trajectory, right? So like you decide you want to be an entrepreneur and you get into it. You're the person, you have to do all the things. Like there's no, you know, you have to do the accounting,
Yeah.
you have to do the marketing, you have to do all of the things. And what I think you find is like you have to create some sort of discipline, especially in the areas that you don't like to do as much. But if you end up doing those for a long period of time, they can become very life draining, and then that makes it very challenging. And so hopefully over time there are like there's this great book. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Benjamin Hardy, but he's written a couple of different books, and one of them is Who Not How, and it's great. You know, just like, okay, when you get to this point, what can you delegate? You know, and it's now again like even more available. Okay, I don't like doing this thing. This is not a great use of my time. These things over here I love doing. This is actually like creating more business and generating more over here, but all of this stuff is like, ugh. You know, so looking for ways to offload things, and you know, hiring VAs is like such a cool thing that we have now, where you can have somebody working for you for pretty low cost, and maybe it's really good money for them. Like I know a lot of people, you know, have VAs from the Philippines, and you know, that kind of thing. So
Right.
there's kind of that aspect of it. But then also you brought up something that I think is really important, and I actually love to help people with this, is like our identity and our self-worth getting caught up in the thing we're doing. And that is not like a easy, well, I don't want to say it's super hard, but it takes some like very intentional like thought and like work to decouple that and say, like, listen, I'm not like, just because maybe I'm whatever, not having a good day at work doesn't mean that I'm not a good person or whatever. But like because we all have these identities, right? We have like, do you guys have kids?
No,
No.
just a dog.
Just a
Okay,
dog.
just a dog. Okay. So, but like, you know, identities of like husband, wife, daughter, son, whatever, right? And then we create these other identities as we go through life. So maybe like you start running and you love running and you become a runner, and now that's like a new identity that you have. The same thing with like being an entrepreneur and your business. Like, oh, I'm a business owner now, and this is what business owner looks like. So it's being careful and learning how to just separate those two things, so that who you are as a human being does not equal what you're doing for your business.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that definitely is. That
Yeah.
is, well, we could break that down in multiple episodes, I feel like, about how to separate that work and life balance and save your soul a little bit, because we definitely crossed that line so many times.
Well, how do you combat that with people who put that identity on you? You know, like you look at me and obviously you think runner, you know, not really, but you're like, yeah, I am a runner, but I'm other things. But these people are putting this identity on you. You know, I think oftentimes even like as businesses, like, you know, you'll have a business that's like, oh, I'm a camera company, but but we make more things than just the camera. We make a microphone, blah, blah, you know, we're whatever. So how do you change other people's, or can you change other people's perceptions on like what the identity they put on you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. For me, and this can be, you know, and everybody lives differently how they want to, but for me, I don't really care. They can label me however they want. You know, within reason, as long as they're not being like, I don't know, malicious towards me or something.
Yeah.
But like if they're labeling me as something that's not really exactly what I am, like I think that's where like being grounded in your identity of who you know you are is so important, because then it's like whatever, like you have this like shield sort of thing of like, oh yeah, you think I'm that, yeah, whatever, like it's no big deal. And then if they want to have a conversation about that and be open to like talking to you more to learn more about you, then maybe they'll just, you know, discover that. But you know, we live in a world where constant judgment is happening all the time, and I try to live in a world where I'm being curious as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, so because then you can take that right back on that person who's judging you, because that's essentially what's happening. They're saying, oh, I think you're this, and you're like, oh, interesting, you know, what's going on there? What's going on in their life that makes them make that snap judgment or whatever? And then you're not taking it personally. And I think that's one of the biggest things is like, everybody has their own stories and stuff going on, and they're walking around projecting that everywhere. And when you realize that, you're just like, oh, it's just it's their thing. It's not me. It's not on me. I think it's a really freeing way to operate.
I guess this is okay to say. So your sister is one of our best friends. And so just in talking to her, I feel like I know more about who you are and your identity outside of your work than I did about your actual work, which I think speaks a lot to how you're living your life. Like Heidi talks about you guys being hikers. You're a family guy. You love to run you're the one who ran the Grand Canyon, like the rim to rim to rim in a day. Wasn't that you?
I just did rim to rim, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, still rim to rim. Like that's a lot of running. Yeah. So, I mean, like I say all that to say that I know from your sister that you have this whole identity outside of your work, and everybody knows you for more than just what you are or what you do for a living. And I think that we could all learn a little bit of something about that. Obviously you're doing something right. And I feel like Chris and I are definitely the worst at it, which is why we wanted to have you on to speak a little bit about, you know, business coaching and finding your identity and not letting it become your identity, because we are, you know, there's two kinds of people. There's people who live to work and work to live. And for years, Chris and I were opposite people. But now we've both kind of gotten on the same page where we both really love our work, and it can be draining, but it also can be super life-giving at the same time. But we know that we have to set those boundaries better. And we've never wanted to talk about this in the podcast because we don't know that answer. So I think that's what I was trying to get back to say is just that we have a lot to learn from you. Yeah. I don't know if you want to dive in there too, Chris.
Well, I mean, just so when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, be my coach, like what are the most common problems that you see? Because I feel like we're all probably on the same page. You know, everybody's different and they all have their own unique things, but what are the most common things that you see when somebody comes to you?
Yeah. So like broadly speaking, my favorite person to talk to is somebody who's like, I know I'm getting in my own way. Like just, okay, good. We're at a good start. A lot of the time it's like pretty high stress levels, getting overwhelmed, just feeling like, you know, they're not really enjoying life. They're not enjoying the journey of owning the business or life or whatever that looks like. Maybe feel out of balance. And they just feel, a lot of times I feel as business owners, it's cool that you guys work together. Well, maybe a blessing and a difficulty at the same time. But a lot of business owners feel alone. They feel like they're just out there, and whether they're a sole proprietor or they're in charge of a bunch of people, sometimes they just feel like they don't have anybody in their corner to talk through challenges, and it's hard to talk to your spouse sometimes because they don't understand the business struggles that you're going through or whatever. Um, so those are a lot of the typical things that I see with people, and sometimes there's the imposter syndrome. There's a bunch of stuff that comes from that, but definitely this like identity stuff and limiting beliefs, that's a big piece of it, and that's where a lot of my
Yeah.
clients have the biggest breakthroughs because we're not taught that. We're not taught how to like deal with that. That's not something that's like covered in school. Emotional intelligence isn't really covered in school, and there may be more coming now, which is cool, which is one of the good things I think
Right.
about like where we're at as a society is, while it seems like there's a lot of crazy conflict, and there is, it's because we're like raising the level of consciousness, and we're not like, you can see it from generation to generation, like just thinking about like simple things like, and maybe you had a different experience, but and this is not a knock to anybody or any generational thing, but if you think about like how much our grandparents said like I love you to their kids, to our parents, and then how much our parents said that to
Mm.
us, and now how much we say it to our kids, it's like exponential changes over
Mm-hmm.
generation. And so I see a lot of
Hmm.
positive in that. It's cool. And I just went off on quite a tangent, but anyway.
No, that's great. No, it's good. You're so right though. I mean, that
Hmm.
has an impact on us. I want to get like practical advice, and you've already given some good practical advice, but I know that we're asking for some pretty in-depth information.
Hmm.
Like that's not a one podcast interview kind of thing. It's a whole coaching process,
Yeah,
obviously.
Right.
So we're not asking for you to like consolidate everything that you say and teach and everything into one 30, 45-minute episode here.
Yeah.
But what do you think we should talk about as far as the most valuable stuff? Because I keep thinking like our audience is largely like digital nomads.
Hmm.
Like they are ultimately trying to take their business on the road or international or
Yeah.
something.
So like, people come to us all the time and they're like, "Hey, how do you guys do this?" And we can give them practical, tips or advice on, like this is how we did it. This is how we were able to work from the road. And a lot of times when you see people online, especially like us in our field, most people are like, "Oh, you just become a content creator and that's how I'm able to travel," or whatever. And yes, that is one avenue, but that's not the only avenue to be able to do that. So you as an entrepreneur, as somebody who runs your own business, is this something that, is it possible to be like a digital nomad, to be able to travel the world, still work, and not be a content creator and share your content with everybody in order for you to keep traveling? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So in my experience, yeah, for sure. So and part of like what led me to today. So I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years now, which is, I feel like, a cool milestone.
Wow.
It's like a long time. And
That's a really long time.
yeah. And so we started though, like from that IT job, I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. We started by opening a gym. And so we had a gym for 8 years. So that was the first part of my entrepreneurial journey. And that was very much like not digital nomad life. um, but it was super cool. And I'm grateful for all of the experiences and everything that I learned from that. And in a lot of ways, it makes me even more grateful now for this digital nomad life that we have now, because I know what those expenses are for a brick and mortar space, like
Hmm.
it's expensive to have that kind of thing. And now to just like work at home and have
Hmm.
like almost zero expenses, unless I, want to have them for marketing and whatever, all that stuff. But there's none of that. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes those transitions really lend itself to making good decisions now, and like learning some hard lessons. But for us, yeah, 100%. I'm actually hardly on social media at all. I don't like doing content very much. It's like, I'm kind of classified as like an elder millennial. So I'm like right on the the cusp of that. Where we grew up like kind of pre-internet, but then also in the thick of it, like coming out, which is a
Mm-hmm.
unique
Hmm.
space and time in life, I think. So I don't really love to overshare. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, because that's where I'm trying to grow my business is on LinkedIn. And like the rest of the stuff,
Yeah.
you'll like if you go to my personal Instagram, I don't know when the last time I posted was, maybe like 6 or 12 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, not posting and not being a content creator and still being a digital nomad is 100% possible and has been for us. And I have set it up too where I'm very intentional. So this whole like keeping the outside passions and then doing this thing. I only take regular calls 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I do all my coaching calls. Thursday, I can take calls if I want or not. Or like today, I just didn't have much going on, and I was like, "Oh, sweet, yes, I'd love to do a podcast because I didn't have any recurring calls today because I intentionally don't set them up there." And then Fridays, I never work. We go snowboarding all winter long. We go hiking in the summer. We do whatever. Just like we go play. So we like set that up on purpose, like intentionally as much as possible. And I think to go back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about like the keeping your not necessarily keeping them separate, but having those outside interests. Like I always tell people, I love being in the mountains. I love splitboarding. I love climbing. If I was just doing that, I would not be as good of a dad. I would not be as fulfilled of a person. I would not be as happy because my work gives me a chance to like pour into people and make me feel like I'm doing something that matters. And like time in the mountains is amazing and recharging and awesome, but it's very selfish. It's just you're going out there just to be, which is great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
having those two things,
Right.
I think really elevates. I wouldn't want to have just one or just the other one. Like I think it's really cool to like cultivate that if you can. Like you should try to have more than just the one thing.
Yeah, no. So you said, like, I like that you said that you can have a digital nomad career without being on social media. In fact, our last podcast episode that came out right before yours was with Carlos Whitaker, and we talked with him and we were saying like he's super into social media. And we said, have you ever thought about, just dropping it all and just leaving it all? And as much as we love being on social media, we've connected with a lot of really cool people. There's always that like, oh, one day I could just like shut my phone off and I never would turn it back onto social media ever again. And there's that idea. But then I also wonder, like, would I still have an option to travel? Because being on social media has opened up so many opportunities for us and we genuinely love sharing. But also there's that side of maybe one day I do want to call it quits. Like, what would that look like? And then hearing and seeing, like, I follow your wife on social media. I see you guys traveling and snowboarding and doing everything. And you are a digital nomad without having to be on social media. And I think that's really encouraging.
That is encouraging. It's nice to know that people, like, just because you don't post about it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? You know? And so, and so like, all right, in the nitty gritty with your business, obviously you do consulting, you do business coaching and everything, but if somebody's wanting to travel, they're wanting to have a similar lifestyle as you, do they have to go into the consulting business or how do you go about finding clients or making those connections to make sure that it does happen?
Yeah. No, I would say you could, conceivably you could do anything and be a digital nomad. And remind me to come back to social media one more time for a second. But I think because like, you could be a coder and work from the road. Like there's plenty of jobs. And one of the best things about COVID is that it opened a lot of people's eyes, especially like old school management, to like, oh yeah, people can work from home and it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Game changer.
So I think there's more opportunities than ever to work like remote jobs. The reason I was able to step into this world was built on that whole first part of my career. It was like I learned how to like talk to people and have consultations and help them make behavior changes and all this stuff. And so it was not too hard of a transition from that to this, but whatever that looks like, I think that's an exploratory process for everybody. And there's no solid answer on that. Cause like if you're engineer, like for example, when I was working IT, it was like I had to keep track of spreadsheets and do all this stuff, and I was like, this is not how my brain works. I'm like a vision guy, I'm creative, like this is not for me. But there's people who can do that kind of stuff like remotely, potentially on their own or for other companies, and love that, and then just like shut the laptop at the end of the day and boom, go, and not have to worry about finding clients. But finding clients is a whole nother world. That's like that's the full-time job part of like owning your own business. You can't rest
Yeah.
on your laurels on that.
I was going to ask you do you ever, like, I guess, take it back a step further before business coaching? Do you ever help people figure out what their passion and calling should be? Like what that career step is? Do you ever do anything like that where you help guide them into figuring out what that business is?
Yeah, I do. So this, I came up with this name a while back, and this kind of goes back to like the music thing. And it was, because so we started the gym, and then 8 years go by, and I'm like, I haven't played music for 8 years. Like, what just happened? And like that was the plan. And so I was like, oh, this is like my forgotten art, right? And I came up with that name. And then I was like, oh, I bet you there's a bunch of people who have similar stories. And so I kind of got all excited about that. I like wrote and recorded an album. I started doing podcast interviews, talking to people about their forgotten arts, and just like was super inspired. And oh no, and I just lost the question that you asked me. Say it again. Helping people. I got it. I know where I was going with this. Okay. Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one blanking today.
Yeah. And so then, that question that I said earlier, like, what makes you feel fully alive? And I was asking people that on the podcast, and I was running into a lot of people who were like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, how can I help people like figure this out? So I actually created a workbook that is designed for that. So I have like, the first part is like 20 questions to help you like start triggering different ideas in your brain to like, what could that be? I'm not sure, but like just to start that process and get going down that road. And then I think from there, it's just go try stuff, go see what sticks. And it might be one thing for a little bit and then something else for a little bit. Gone are the days of like, go do this career for 25 years and retire. Like you could try different stuff.
Yes, you can. I think that's been hard as millennials to let that idea go. Because I don't know about you, but like my dad worked the same job my entire life and retired from that job.
So did my dad. My dad, I mean, he did switch companies, but it was the same position,
Yeah.
It's,
and then what is it? Millennials on average now keep the same job for like 4 years at most or something like that. Like we do bop around a lot. I think there used to be a lot of shame or, like, oh, they're inconsistent or they're flaky. But no, I love that you aren't married to one thing forever. Like I am that person where I have 1,000 different interests and who knows what I'll be interested in 5 years. But it's true. You can do whatever you want. You're not married to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, it's like trying stuff out, seeing what works. But then if you can mitigate the risk as much as possible, I love that. Like you can go be a founder and you can live that. I have a couple clients who are founders. If you want to live that life, you better be ready for that. That is intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like extreme resolve. But if you can mitigate the risk, like what I did with the IT job, it was actually like perfect timing because it was kind of around the downturn 2008, 2009, and things were kind of crashing and the company was shrinking and somehow I still had a job. I don't know why, because I didn't do that much. Wow. But I just would ask my boss like, hey, can I go down to 30 hours a week? And he's like, yeah, great. And then I was like, hey, can I go down to 20 hours a week? Yeah, great. Until eventually I was like, all right, here we go. Like pulling out the safety net. But I think there's a lot of value in that too, is like, can you find something that pays your bills so that you can focus on doing this thing or trying this new thing without like putting yourself in a, tough situation? Because I don't know. I feel like that sort of risk is easier to deal with. It's like, okay, I got to use more energy and I got to work hard for a while, but then the transition is much smoother. Or it doesn't work out and you're like, okay, well, let's try something else.
For sure. At least you gave it a shot. And I mean, if nothing else, maybe you learned that you hate it or you get another idea for something else.
Yeah.
That's sort of the route we took with our businesses is we did one thing. It sort of takes the risk off of it. Not entirely, but Chris has owned his own business for 15, 16 years
around
now.
That too, yeah.
Like graphic design, web design, that kind of stuff. And then I joined in when we got married. So like that has been our bread and butter for our entire marriage, and it's still over 50% of our income. But as like this other business of social media and content creating has become a thing, that percentage slowly, like it's crossing over a little bit, but it takes that risk out because we know at the end of the day, like we're still able to pursue this passion and try new things like a podcast alongside the YouTube and see like what works, what doesn't work, and still be able to make money along the way. So that's how we've kind of made that work.
I think it's interesting though that you went to your boss and you asked him, like you kind of said, hey, can I scale back a little bit? And most people that I know wouldn't have done that. They're afraid of that even first ask. Or I did have, like before I started doing the whole freelance thing, I did have an awful boss. And I remember mentioning something, nothing was ever set in stone. It was me dreaming of maybe one day doing something else. And then I was fired, you know, and 2 weeks later. So because of it, and he was, so when you are in that like middle ground of, you're like, you know what, I think I want to start something, but you're afraid to take that leap of faith, you know, that step out. Most people are not like my boss, but are most people like your boss, where you ask a question and they're like, we can work towards that goal, or like what does that first step look like for most people?
Well, I don't know exactly what most people's bosses are, but I would actually venture to guess that more people are like your boss than mine. Honestly, like I think because it's just normal to have this scarcity mindset of like, I don't know why. Like I think a really good boss is somebody who like has you for the time. Actually, this is one of the best lessons that I got from when we owned the gym. We had some clients who had a business for a long time, a multi-generational business. And I was thinking about bringing on another coach to help, but I knew she wanted to open her own facility someday too. And I was like, what do you guys think I should do? You know, what do you have any? And they're like, is she awesome? Like, yes. Is she going to help you? Yes. Then are there enough people for both of you in all these cities? Like, yes. Okay, then take on the help while you have it, and you know, really, you know, train her up and teach her, and she'll be awesome for you, and you'll both, you know, be successful. And then when she's ready to go off on her own, then like wish her well, and there's plenty for everybody. And if managers and bosses could see that, like, in you caring about the person and their dreams, they're also going to help your business in the meantime better because you actually care, not just say you care or just treat them as a number, then I think we would have a lot healthier companies. But I will say that, like, just do what you can to mitigate the risk, like financially as much as you can. If you can save up a bunch of extra to have, you know, some set aside, reduce all your expenses. What we did is we sold all kinds of stuff. Like it was ridiculous, you know, typical, like, did college, get out of college, get the corporate job. So we had, and then we bought a condo. So we had a condo, 2 car payments, 2 motorcycle payments, 2 student loans. And we're like, this is so stupid, right?
It's a lot.
And so we ended up selling a lot of stuff. Like we sold our motorcycles, we like buckled down, we paid things off. We like did everything that we could to mitigate the risk financially so that we could make that leap and make less money and be okay. So I think, you know, doing that, but no matter what you do, this is still going to be scary no matter what. I still remember how scary it was to like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. That's terrifying. To take that first step is absolutely terrifying. Especially because, I mean, a lot of times you do fail. I mean, we've failed at plenty of different business ventures. And
well, you know, I feel like with a normal typical 9-to-5 corporate job, whatever it is, there's this level of consistency or reliability for the most part. But as somebody who owns your own business or, you know, whatever, like that net is kind of taken from you a little bit. The consistency or the reliability is dependent on your skill set or just the flavor of the month. You know, it's just like you can't depend on it at the very beginning, or like you just don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
It's but I feel like everyone that we talk to, or that we know that has taken that first step. Like they're like, yeah, it's scary, but they're still doing it, or or they don't regret doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get on board with this whole like entrepreneur idea, because I was very much raised like, go to college, get the career, that kind of thing. Like you not necessarily you have to stick with the same job, but you have to have something that seems consistent. Like my parents were very big like finance people, of make sure you have enough to saved up and that kind of thing. And so the idea of being an entrepreneur or self-employed and having a not consistent paycheck, like 1 month it may be 5 times what it was the month before, and you're always having to save extra just in case clients don't come through. It's high risk, because it took me a long time to get on board with that, but I don't regret it. I really don't. Even in the worst days, maybe there are a few days here and there where I'm like, what are we doing? It's so stressful. But overall, I think it really is worthwhile.
Yeah.
We really love it.
So, David, if you were able to give like one piece of advice to somebody listening right now that is even thinking about stepping out, like what would you say?
I think I would say trust your intuition, trust yourself. Like really listen to it, and like, is it scary because it's new and you've never done it before, and you came from a family same like where everybody kind of does it by the book, and so there's no one to model it after, or no one who's been there before to kind of show you that, or because all of those things are you can overcome them. And even if your personality is predisposed to like more of a rule follower, if you like feel in your gut like I'm gonna regret if I don't give this a try, then I think that's the thing to listen to and to go after it. But if you're like, it's okay, no big deal, I don't think I would care if I didn't do it, then maybe not.
Yeah, that's me to a T. I'm like, yes, that was me. That is me still today. That's every day of my life. I do have one more question for you, and I may be completely off base on this or not, but I'm just curious, like, do you offer services in your business coaching to sort of help people on the practical side of business ownership? Of, maybe that's trying to figure out like what insurance or something like that could be for self-employed, like trying to figure out how to manage your hours. Do you do any of that side of business, like the nitty gritty back end? Because like one thing that we get asked a lot is like, managing it on the road, like you have to get taxed in different places sometimes, that kind of stuff, like they're really like not fun. Do you offer direction in that kind of thing, or could you point people in the direction of how to set themselves up for success and to be legal?
Yeah, so I would say no to the legal stuff. That's like definitely, you can talk to a business lawyer if you really need to like know the exact laws, or like a tax attorney or something. But as far as like all the other practical business stuff, yeah, for sure. Like I've spent a lot of time marketing. I've spent a lot of time helping people with time management, because that's like one of the biggest things at the end of the day, right? Is like, especially if you're traveling, how to maximize your time. And then also how you feel about the time that you're spending. Because because I have, people will come to me and they'll be like, this to-do list is never ending. Like it's never ending. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that great? You have a never ending list of problems to solve. So yeah, like practically breaking that down into like, well, how do I organize that? And then how do I feel like I'm accomplishing things and feel good about the progress that I'm making, and not just feel like I'm constantly, in the thick of like being behind and overwhelmed and never getting everything done that I want to get done. So to answer your question, yes to most of it, no to the legal stuff.
Okay, cool. I totally get that.
Yeah.
100%. Nobody wants to claim the legal stuff. Like, no.
Yeah.
Someone else.
So
that's why we just steer clear of some of those questions.
Yeah, we're just like dodging. All right. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, maybe join one of your coaching programs or, or whatever, what's the best way? How can people find out more about what you do?
Yeah. So my website's the best way. It's unbrokenpursuit.com. And there's a bunch of information on there, but I think there's a cool free tool on there for anybody who's interested. It's called Self-Mastery for Business Owners, and it's an assessment, and it's broken down into 6 different categories, and it's super low tech. I designed it just to like print this thing out, sit at a coffee shop, and like score yourself. And it's designed to see like, what am I doing well? Where are maybe some blind spots that I don't know I have? And what are some, areas that I probably know, and then I score myself appropriately that I need to work on. And it's just a really great kind of starting point to say like, okay, what can I work on next in improving myself and my ability to run my business really well, and then also like be a good human.
We'll put all the links in the description down below, and so that way people can find you. We know not to tell them to go to social media, but are you on LinkedIn? Can we at least like link to your LinkedIn? Is that something we can do?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. I do have I think 7,000
Okay.
connections on LinkedIn now, so semi-respectable.
Man,
I am so far from that 500 plus mark.
I think I have 50. Shoot, man. Like, all right.
We're definitely the social media people. Got to work on that. That's our next step, LinkedIn.
David, thanks so much for like just sitting down and talking about just everything business related. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun, and great to finally see you guys face to face.
Yeah, hope to see you soon.
Thanks for listening to What No One Tells You with Chris and Sarah. If you have a comment or question that you want answered on the air, be sure to send us a message to hello@chrisandsarah.com, or you can call or text our phone number at 423-825-9572. Thanks for listening.